Warning, this is not skydiving instruction. This is a collection of opinions. The only person you should seek any skydiving instruction from is your licensed instructor or safety and training advisor. And even some of those guys give bad instruction. So take everything everyone says with caution. Or don't. Frankly, I don't even know why I feel compelled to do this. So, when can I do that? One of the most common questions I hear around the drop zone is, when can I do that? The real question you should be asking is, when should I do that? Skydiving is a lot like scuba diving. It looks really simple, and anybody can stick a respirator in their mouth and go underwater for a little bit. All the training that we do and all the experience that we accumulate is there to help us survive when things go wrong. It would be pretty foolish to assume just because you've gone scuba diving a couple of times that cave diving is a good idea. Everything is about making good decisions. And although skydiving is safer than it's ever been, it's still dangerous. The first thing you need to do in order to reach your skydiving goals is learn to skydive. When should you do that? Whenever you're ready. Some people go straight to the accelerated freefall program, while others start with a tandem skydive. Either way is fine. So when should you go to the wind tunnel? My opinion is sometime after your first AFF jump and before your last AFF jump. Rob Laidlaw in Skydive University has an accelerated tunnel freefall program where you go through the entire program before you even take your first skydive. I like that program, but there aren't a lot of those around. So when should you start shooting accuracy? Pretty much right away. You can start figuring out how to aim your canopy to a specific area on the drop zone. Later on, you'll get even better to narrow that down to a very specific area on the drop zone. Maybe after 50 jumps, you like accuracy so much you buy a parafoil and you start shooting accuracy and landing on a target about the size of a quarter. During AFF and your time in the tunnel, you should learn how to fall in a neutral body position, move forward and backward, side slide left, right, maintain heading control, and move up and down relative to another skydiver. Once you've achieved all of that, I highly recommend you look at Kinesthesia, The Art of Body Flight by Guy Manos and Norman Kent. That'll teach you how to refine those skills and expand on them with other skydivers. I'm not going to lie, zoo dives are fun. And I've always been envious of Joe Jennings and all the guys who did the original Junk Day where they hucked cars out the back of a sky van. And if this is as far as you want to take your skydiving career, it's not a big deal. That's fine. Just know that they're not going to advance your skill set very much, and they can oftentimes be very dangerous. Once you've demonstrated the ability to land in a specific area on the drop zone, you might be ready for doing some proximity flying. This is where you fly your canopy near another canopy. You can start doing this pretty much as soon as you understand what front risers are, what rear risers are, and the basics of how a canopy flies. Grab a more experienced skydiver who has proximity flying experience, do a high pull, and get within 20 feet of each other and see how long you can stay there. It's best to take a canopy flying course to learn this. Up until recently, the USPA Skydivers Information Manual had a requirement of 7 ram air parachute skydives in order to start engaging in canopy relative work. Obviously, that's a little soon for people nowadays to do any crew or canopy formations. But the only requirement I see is that you can consistently land within 16 feet of a target before you begin doing crew with an experienced skydiver. Typically, you want to start with one other very experienced canopy relative work instructor and work your way up into some two stacks, maybe some biplanes, maybe even a downplane. But before you begin, make sure you have the appropriate equipment. The most important pieces are a hook knife and Dacron lines on your canopy. Do not attempt to do any canopy formation work with microlines, spectra, anything that can basically turn into a saw and cut your leg off. By this point in your career, you've learned how to fall and fly with other people. You've been in some pretty sketchy free fall situations from your zoo dives. Your accuracy is good. You've flown around other parachutes and maybe you've even touched some other parachute fabric. Now it's time to be on some larger skydives. All of this training that you've had up until now is really going to pay off when you're deploying near a lot of other parachutes. And this will really pay off when you are pulling high after these large waves and you can get around your buddies and maybe form up a very large proximity loose stack as you guys are flying back to the drop zone for landing. If you did things the right way and stayed very, very focused, by about 150 jumps, you might actually be ready to do some very large canopy relative work formations. If there's no one at your drop zone who does crew, or not enough people who do crew to make large formations, the crew dogs are always holding camps. Minimum 200 skydives to base jump. That's a very loose framework because you could just bomb out of an airplane 200 times and have 200 really crappy landings and then you're qualified to base jump, right? Not quite. Base jumping is just as much or more about your canopy flying skills as it is anything else. You really need to know how to use your front risers, your rear risers to land into a tight spot, get yourself away from the wall, and avoid an obstacle. Everything we've talked about up until now is going to prepare you for very large ways, and I'm talking 100 plus. P3 camps are fantastic ways to learn how to do big ways. But you've gotta be prepared because if you land downwind or are unsafe under canopy, you're gonna get cut. Maybe you're not interested in big way belly or big way crew or base jumping. You just want to free fly and do freestyle and head down and all that really cool stuff. Well, that's cool. Get to the tunnel. The iFly wind tunnels have the International Body Flight Association progression program. You go from demonstrating your belly skills all the way to demonstrating your back flying skills. Then you demonstrate your sit flying skills. That's a good place to start doing some other two-way skydives with some people. Once you've demonstrated you are very proficient in belly flying in four-way, some larger ways, you can dive down to a formation. You've been to the tunnel several times. You've got a couple hours, maybe even about 3 hours of free fall, either in the sky or in the tunnel. Angle flying is a next good step. It's best to start with a coach on some 2 or 3-way dives, flat tracking, before you get into complex angle dives. And if your goal is to fly wingsuits, everything I talked about before this is going to be absolutely critical. Flying wingsuits looks very easy, but strapping yourself into a straitjacket and hucking yourself into the air is pretty darn dangerous. You better know what you're doing before you do it. I put swooping and canopy piloting way down the line in this progression because you really do need a solid, and I mean solid, foundation in canopy skills to get to the point where you don't kill yourself, frankly. Being able to shoot accuracy, fly in proximity, do some canopy relative work, some canopy formations, being able to fly high performance parachutes around lots of other people, It's all essential. And this idea of canopy progression should really take a back seat to your canopy piloting progression. You can do high performance landings on a large parachute with a light wing loading. There's nothing that says you have to have a very high performance parachute before you start doing your high performance landings. In fact, you really shouldn't do high performance landings on a high performance parachute for the first time. If your main goal is to do head down flying and free flying, you don't have to do all of these other things. You don't have to buy a parafoil, and you don't have to do crew, and you don't have to base jump or wingsuit or any of those other things. But what you do have to do is spend time in the tunnel. You really should go through the IBA, Body Flight Association progression, where you get proficient in belly, and then you get proficient in back, and then you get proficient in sit, and then you go to head down. And the reason is, this is really dangerous. You can reach very high speeds, and one little move can send you flying through the sky. You really do need to know what you're doing before you jump with other people head down. In fact, you really should know what you're doing before you even do a head down solo dive. And the only safe way to get to the point where you know what you're doing is by training in the tunnel. Once you've spent some time in the wind tunnel and demonstrated your ability to fly straight down, head down, you might want to give speed skydiving a try. It's a lot of fun, and you can get really fast. It'll also give you incredibly good altitude awareness and body awareness. And now we get to free flying, mixed or vertical free flying, and you notice that it's at the very end. And that's because you really do need to know how to do belly flying, sit flying, back flying, head down, and be very proficient before you start jumping with other people. And you better be really proficient before you start jumping free flying with lots of other people. This is really dangerous, and it just takes one visit to the Team Friday Freakout video compilation to see how many people have been hurt, killed, maimed, otherwise injured doing this. I started this whole video with a warning that this is not skydiving instruction, and I just want to reiterate that. You don't have to follow all of this stuff. You can do whatever you want. Quite frankly, you don't even need real licensed skydivers to teach you how to skydive. As long as you're following FAA Part 105 and all the rules and regulations within that, you can do whatever you want. It's up to you.